The April 16, 2024 special meeting of the Everett Public Schools Board of Directors is hereby called to order. Will the secretary please call the roll?
President Mitchell.
Present.
Vice President Herman.
Present.
Director Atkins.
Present.
Director Mason.
Present.
Director Revelinsky.
Present.
Thank you. Dr. Saltzman, were there any changes to the agenda since it was published?
No, Madam Chair, there are no changes to this agenda.
Thank you so much. We will now move on to our work study session, which is professional learning overview. Dr. Scott.
Thank you, President Mitchell, and good afternoon, everybody. President Mitchell, Dr. Saltzman, Board of Directors. We've been looking forward to this afternoon for a very, very long time. And one of the reasons why we have been looking forward to discussing professional learning and engaging you here is because we think professional learning in Everett Public Schools is really central to our identity, in that we believe that every single staff member, every single student in our organization deserves a skillful staff member who is embracing that growth mindset, who gets their skills sharpened through professional learning in our organization and takes a reflective stance to where they are as a professional today and where they need to go into the future. So tonight's design is intentional around both engaging you in the structures, the conditions, the environment in which our staff members engage in professional learning. But we've also kind of created this meta moment or this meta experience where this is actually designed to lead you to what a staff member might actually experience in Everett Public Schools. So the next 2 hours, there's going to be many times where you're going to get a behind the scenes, behind the curtain look at what it's like, certain tenets, hallmarks of professional learning in Everett Public Schools, and you get to experience that as a participant tonight. So we thank you in advance for your participation and engagement. Without further ado, I'm going to invite up our Director of Professional Learning, Mimi Brown.
Thank you, Dr. Scott. My whole team is here. You'll meet them in a moment. We're excited to be here with you, and we're very excited to have this time with you. This is a special amount of time. We know you have a lot on your agenda throughout the whole year, so thank you for this block of time. So we have some agenda and outcomes today. We will learn about Everett Public Schools professional learning. You might see that as PL. Our mission and vision, the conditions. You see these right here on these lovely blocks. The conditions, structures, and outcomes that we follow, and the why and the how behind the activities. Dr. Scott just alluded to this, peeking behind the curtain as to some of our thinking behind these tenets. So the definition of connection by Brené Brown. Anyone else a Brené Brown fan? Woo-hoo. All right. The energy that exists between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued, when they give and receive without judgment, and when they derive sustenance and strength from the relationship. So thinking about connection, peeling behind the curtain, when you came in, we asked that you took time to talk with someone. We had some talk cards out there, and you could talk about this or that, something fun. It allows you to connect, and when people are coming just transparently from a work site, and they're coming to learn, sometimes you need to code shift you talk, or just switch your mind to a new environment. We have to form trust really quickly so we can engage in learning. Our mission in the professional learning department is to ensure every student excels by fostering and sustaining a culture for learning. Dr. Scott just alluded to this, where we engage all district staff in exemplary professional learning. You're going to hear me say this a few times tonight. What we do for our staff, we do for our students. The professional learning we do for them and engage them in, we want them to turn around and use those skills and use that joy and use the learning with their students. Oftentimes, you will see these in classrooms, norms and agreements. Have you guys seen any of these on your journeys and your travels? Excellent. So you see a primary example and a little bit older example. So a class agreement, and then you see the word charter too, which aligns to our ruler, our social emotional learning curriculum. So the purpose of having a norm or a community agreement would be to align how we work together, create psychological safety, trust really fast so we can engage in hard conversations. Ideally, we co-construct these in a classroom. When it's a short amount of time like today, you'll see in that in just a moment, we'll do that and offer some to the group. We want to foster a learning environment. So you have a name tag, and next to that, you have another table tent that has our mission and vision that you just saw. On the other side, if you turn that around, you'll see a few norms. Yeah, right there, perfect. Today, when we work together, we want you to be able to take care of yourself and your needs, be fully present, take risks, and be mindful of other learners. There's an amazing quote that I'd love to read to you. I won't read all the quotes to you, but this one's a great one. The research of psychological safety in group settings is especially compelling. Google sponsored a well-known study on highly productive teams. The results found that emotional intelligence and psychological safety was far and away the most important dynamic that sets successful teams apart. This finding can be applied wherever people gather to do something together, including learning together in PD or professional learning, meeting in professional learning community or PLCs, or collaborate in an instructional leadership team. So this is a powerful reason why we set up norms to create that safe environment so we can learn together. We're going to start doing that right now. Right off the get-go, you have a folder in front of you. It has lots of goodies, but if you open that up, on the left side, you'll see some paper. In just a moment, you're going to have a time to jot a few notes, and everybody in the room is joining us. We're all participating together. We're going to think of an experience when you grew professionally, and we're going to do an activity called Write to the Bottom of It. There's a fun little story behind this. A principal in New York City asked a group of students to write to the bottom of it. She really meant to get to the heart of the story or the matter that they were writing about. The kids took her literally and wrote to the bottom of the page and stopped. She found that it didn't hinder the experience. They actually wrote more than they had ever had before, and it helped the jumping off part for the rest of the unit. So we're going to ask you to write to the bottom of it, and your prompt is think of an experience when you grew professionally. It could be in a school setting, it could be in a work setting. Why did that impact you? What conditions, activities, or actions impacted you? And we're going to take just 4 minutes to jot down your thinking around that question. I was thinking about this for myself, and the moment that stands out in my mind is the first time I went to a Reader's Workshop conference, and they forced me to write as I was asking my students to write. That pushed me in a way that I hadn't been pushed before, so I was pushed out of my comfort zone. I loved the setting. We actually got to go away for our site, and it was a number of days, and I was able to come back and I implemented a lot of what I learned. So I felt like it was practical. I'm one of the people that have to chew on it to how am I going to use it. So that's something that I thought of. Does anybody have an experience that anywhere in the room they'd be willing to share?
I have one, because you mentioned Brene Brown.
Yeah.
So I'll be completely vulnerable right now. That, at the foundation brunch today, I think we heard something about the rate of change. So my company likes to go through a lot of change, always. And people will say, just change. But right before the pandemic, they changed like 4 computer systems all at the same time, which was just, so it's how I document, how I do this, how I do that. They had these learnings, these meetings, and said, and I just went in, I'm like, what were you guys thinking? Like, do you understand our workload? Do you do this? And so luckily the person that was leading it called me right back, it was Tracy, watch your tone. Because this is how you sounded, and this is how you come across. And, you're not as effective when you do that. And you really need to just sort of, think about how you can communicate the same thing more effectively. And she really did coach me. Well, then during the pandemic is when I found Brene Brown, and I found some mindfulness. So most recently, with all the change, my company's been doing these Meet the Leaders, and instead of having a comment about the change, I listened to Simon Sinek's podcast, and he asked a question of most of his guests of, tell me a time from your childhood that I can relive with you. So I asked that of the leader, and he goes, oh, and he told a fabulous story. And I think I helped keep the positive tone of the meeting. And so I did, it took a while, but I learned from somebody, I continued to grow, and I applied it. And I think that's what we want to see from our kids. They can make mistakes.
Wow, that had a lot of elements for me to rename. You had a growth mindset, you had a coaching moment, you were able to apply it in another setting. There's a lot to that. Thank you.
There was a lot. Yeah. And that's what our kids do, and our staff does.
Absolutely. You set us up for the whole time together. That was great. Does anybody else want to share one?
We didn't plan that.
No. But I'll get you a prize later. Anybody else? There'll be lots of opportunities. All right. I mentioned my teams here, so I'd like to take a moment to introduce them, and you'll hear their voices during our time together as well. So we have Renee Melton is our admin assistant in professional learning. Shelley Bratton is one of our facilitators. You'll hear that in a lot of context. Stacy Dockenhausen. Lorraine Marks is also a facilitator, and Anne LaRue helps with classified professional learning. So that's the team. And we are building a lot of things. Thus you see the blocks, one of the things to help us keep that in our mind. We are building the beginning educator support team. That's our facilitators work on those practices and refine those all the time. The teacher principal evaluation program, you'll hear TPEP mentioned throughout our time together. Orientation systems for everybody in our system. The frontline professional learning system, a tool that we use. The Professional Learning Advisory Council. We have a feedback, a stakeholders team. We have lots of collaborative groups. We're going to highlight the instructional teams and the cross-department CRC meetings. We also have a lot of grants that go through our department. A couple federal grants, Title II and IV, and several state grants we'll touch upon. And overall, we're excited to be here, and we represent our department, but we work with everybody in our system. So we're here, and professional learning happens throughout the CRC. The hands of the CRC help deliver it, but the buildings do a ton of work that we collaborate. They deliver the bulk of our professional learning. So we represent a lot of people's work, many hands. We want to start with get you on your feet. You probably already saw this as you came in. We have 6 tables, and we're going to do the marshmallow challenge. We talked about building. We're going to ask you to build a little bit today to get your mind engaged in that building practice. So you will have a table group. You will see that on the inside of your folder, you have a number. It correlates with a table that you'll be at. And the tables are right behind you, circling you. And with your table group, you have a bag of materials, and you will build the tallest structure possible using only materials in the Ziploc bag in front of you, and we're going to give you a piece of tape too when you're in your groups. The whole marshmallow at the end of the 10-minute time frame needs to be placed on the top and needs to remain there and not collapse your tower. Really simple, open-ended set of directions. Do you have any questions about those? You'll be in a team. You can build however you like, and you'll want to place the marshmallow, and it has to stay there and not collapse your structure.
And does the marshmallow have to stay whole?
Yes, by definition. Good question. I like it. Are you ready? All right, we'll bring the tape, find your table. There are scissors there too, because you might want to cut. We gave you an extra, typically this is an 18-minute challenge. We're only doing this in 10 minutes. So we gave you an extra tool. You have a yard of ribbon as well, along with the yard of string. And it's Everett colors. So we'll be creative. All right, find your spot. And everybody out in our audience has a number in their folder as well. Your time starts now. And this is your 2-minute warning. 10 minutes goes by fast. We're at 1 minute, less than a minute. Get ready to make sure your marshmallow's on the top. All right, 15 seconds. Make sure your marshmallow's on there. We have a really entertaining 5 seconds. 4, 3, and the dog barked. It is the dog barking timer. All right. Stand back from your table, stand back. All right, we're looking, we're like, ooh, we do have a yardstick, but I'm looking around. Freestanding, it wasn't in the rules not to use the wall, so that is creative. Although I bet if I read the technical directions, freestanding might be, was not in the bag. Oh, now that's thinking through. I didn't think through that. All right, table one, it's okay. As you saw it. So I'm going to ask you to stay with your group for a moment. You have a pad of Post-it notes. And we have started over on time. We're going to ask you to think of two things. Talk with the people that you worked with your group members. Educational impacts. What might we learn from this activity? Please write that on one sticky note. And professional learning is like building a tower. Any predictions on that analogy? Be as creative as you want. We have a poster over here. When you might need a note taker, that'd be great. And we'll put your Post-its on this poster. When you have your ideas recorded on your Post-it note, please follow Dr. Scott's example and place them on the poster. When you've added your thoughts, you can head back to your seat. All right, round of applause for table 2. Table 4, thinking outside the box. And the table. All right, heading over to our posters here. Educational impacts that were thought of was connection, collaboration, trial and error, innovation, resourcefulness, a lot of collaboration, that's a huge theme. Teamwork, couldn't do it alone. Sharing of ideas improved the outcome. Learning from other groups, that's a key one in our math training right now. We communicate, worked as a team, listened to ideas, innovate. Okay, that's really good. Okay, even a failure produces a learning. Thank you. Constructivist approach, absolutely agree. And 2 people wrote that. Professional learning is like building a tower. You need a strong foundation and collaborative, agreeable partners. Professional learning is like building a tower because sometimes you need more than one chance. Well, that's a good one too. Professional learning is like building a tower because you need to construct learning in a way that makes sense to you and your team. It's like a tower because you're building on prior knowledge. These are awesome. We're going to type these up and make this part of our mission. It's like part of a tower because of engagement, foundation. It's additive. It's like a tower because of group work, took risks. Thank you for these thoughts. It gets us into the professional learning mindset. And we have one layer to this. In your folder, you will find the Marshmallow Challenge. So you will find a short summary of the activity. And if you turn to, I believe it's the back of the second page, it talks about how people perform. There's been studies on this, and there's actually a YouTube video you could watch that talks about the studies. So you're going to notice it talks about business school students and kindergarten students, architects and engineers. And if you go to you can skim those. I wanted to highlight, but there's a second article that's attached to this from the Harvard Business Review that actually has a graph. And that graph, you will see how kindergartners outperformed business school students and lawyers. Architects and engineers were at the top there. CEOs were hanging in tough. When they added their executive admins, their performance increased. Any thoughts on this? It's making you chuckle. Make sense? Kindergartners are willing to let their tower fall and then build it again. So as many people said, start and restart. Okay, learn from that experience, going to build something else. They found that business school students talked a lot about they were kind of positioning who was in charge in the group. So it took away some of their efforts toward building together. Architects and engineers applied a lot of their knowledge. I even heard that with one of our architects here in terms of having that triangle or what your base is like. And CEOs, when you add their executive admins, and you can scan this later, it showed different perspectives. Just having different perspectives on your team adds something to the building experience. So we hope you enjoyed that. We wanted to get in and think of that as an analogy because that's definitely what we do in professional learning. We think about the design. This is also in your packet. If this is small to read, you have a handout of this in your folder. We think about a design frame. We think about what's driving our professional learning, our why. Of course, that's student achievement, our priority student outcomes. It's also teacher feedback. It's staff feedback. It's the participants in whatever class. It's the instructional needs. It's our initiatives. So we're thinking of that on a system level. We're thinking about who stands to benefit from the professional learning that we need to offer. Who's best equipped to facilitate? You're going to see that on both sides. Our target participants are classroom-based and those that support our classroom efforts, because everyone does. Facilitation, will it be at the local level? I mentioned it before. A lot of professional learning is done at the local level. That's where you are at, and that's where there's time. You can take away travel time when you do it at the local level. We have district level classes that provides synergy to hear people from different buildings. And we have shared experiences where we go and we support the buildings as well. So there's lots of different ways that we think about answering that question. We think about the best options for what and when. Is it job embedded at the site, as I just mentioned, centralized? And of course, this is huge. How will we measure the impact? The student achievement, the feedback, we're going to give you lots of examples of that. That brings us all the way back. It's a cycle back to the beginning when we have that feedback. I love this quote from Thomas Edison. Good fortune is what happens when opportunity meets planning. So we do a lot of planning. We've kind of shown you the W's there, the why, what, where, when, and we need to get to the how. So digging into that next layer, this is on the back of your handout. How we're building this is with 3 things that you see on these blocks, and we're going to give you examples of this now and have time to chew on that. The conditions and culture of professional learning, the structures and the content, and of course the outcomes and the evidence. This diagram you see here is from the learning forward organization. It was formerly called National Staff Development Council. So we align our work with their outcomes. They're on the cutting edge of research and help inform us to keep current. That first block, conditions. We want to think about the conditions of the culture of collaboration. You named that. That was a through line that you wrote on your sticky notes. You'll see that's a through line of everything we're planning with all of these tenets. Of course, conditions for equity is central and foundational. And we want to have supportive resources that people can take away and utilize. You get another activity right now to keep your brains active in your folder. Let's see, it's a color. It is light blue. Would you read these 4 boxes? Put a 1 in the box that you most resonate with. What's your highest connection that you identify with? A 2 with the next highest, 3 with the next, and 4 with the one that maybe you least identify with.
So 1 is top and 4 is
The least. One you most identify with, the characteristics, yeah. We're putting something, it'll stay turned over for just a moment. Ready? All right, you can turn over the blue piece of paper that was just given to you. This labels those 4 quadrants. It's a nice synthesis, or it's attached to adult learning theory. So if you were in that first top left-hand box, it's called the friend category. You love a story, it's going to engage you. You want to see presentations where you feel like the person's invested in it. A professor, you really want the facts behind it. Scientist, you want the concept. You want the presenter to help you understand and comprehend that specific concept. And the inventor, you want to be creative. You want to manipulate it. You want to think about how you can use it. Does anybody want to say which one that they found themselves in the quadrant? You might be like a colleague.
Well, I'll just be I got scientist, and I am one. So.
How fitting. Perfect. Anybody else?
I would say, I think that it was the professor box that spoke to me.
Yeah, I also got professor.
Awesome, thank you.
Scientist.
Scientist? Professor. So in this group, we have a few professors, we have a couple scientists. Didn't hear any friend ones? I have lots of stories, but I will curb those. So as the person that's facilitating, that's good information for me. We have to realize who's in our audience. And if I'm going to tell a story, I want to make sure I have facts and data behind it to engage the learners into the things that they need to hear to connect that. So how would we use this in action? Our October 2023 Learning Improvement Day, or LID Day, you'd hear us refer to that a lot, You've seen things about that. This is a great example of how we would apply these things. It was centrally designed, and it was locally led, and it focused on equity, specifically culturally responsive education. These pictures here, you see a common PowerPoint. That shows how it was centrally designed, and we're going to dig into that even more. Then here you see people engaged in a poster. You see people engaged in turn and talk. You can think of the learners at your building or in your department, and we gave them opportunity to design it toward their context. So we centrally designed it, they locally led it, and they were able to adapt it. We have an example of that for you. It's in yellow in your folder. And on that first page, you'll see the outcomes, the success criteria, all the things we wanted for people to think about when they're starting to think about how we're going to lead this in our building. And then on the next pages, if you look just in those first two columns, the activity and purpose, we had activities that would call to someone that lent toward the friend that wanted to hear stories or connect with people. The scientist, you jump down to section 1, has our building or department's why. We're going to get those facts for you. They're going to have data that drives our purpose for the day. The professors are going to learn how exactly is this going to go? What does it look like? Again, the friend, after lunch, you're going to even see a snippet of that, an opportunity to elevate voices at the schools. Hearing the stories of our stakeholders really connects to friends. Ironically, you're going to find it touches on the other boxes as well. Our inventors were able to put their assets into action when we asked them to have some equity action planning. What does this look like for your department or your school's improvement plan? So I want to give you a minute because there's a lot of information on that page that you want to scan with this lens. So where do you see yourself connecting if you were a learner to this day? I'm going to bring you to this again. These first two columns are the topics and activities. The last column is where we had a lot of links. You see those hyperlinked? That's where buildings could go to a menu to decide this is the theme, this is what we need everyone in the Everett Public Schools to have a common foundation or understanding with. Over here is you have a menu of how you get there. So you can design and make it match the context of your building or department. So again, I want to give you a moment to scan those first two columns. Where do you see yourself hooking in and identifying with the learning of that day? I'll give you just a minute longer to scan it. Did anything strike your attention? You're interested more in a certain section based on how you learn.
I know I participated in this day at Penny Creek, and I did appreciate, honestly, the story part of it, the friend part of it, but then also the discussions that got more into the why and really what was already happening at the school, where they could make improvements. And I really liked the cross role, so that I had paras and teachers and admin, sort of the little table I was at, which I think really gave me their different perspectives over a classroom versus 750 kids, that different perspective. But then when it got to the end where they're really creating stuff, that's where I just watched. Because that's not my strength, that's not my,
Okay.
especially the big picture creating stuff, not my strength, but it was so much fun to watch.
Thank you for sharing that.
I'll just chime in. I liked how it had elements of the other ones, because Friend was the number 4 for me, but I think the individual stories, reconnecting it back, I think I would feel if that weren't included, I think it still needs to be a good part of it. So I see elements of all of these in here, which is really neat. One part that I think stuck out for me here is I like the circling back around on bringing the information back on regrounding to the why and the who, and putting it to use.
Thank you. Anybody else? There's a lot there. It was a meaty day, and I want to give you an opportunity. You both referenced after lunch there was an opportunity to hear from different stakeholders. So we wanted that experience for everybody. Locally, they could decide, is that a parent community, is that a student? What voices were they going to elevate at that time? Based on the year before, we had this opportunity as well. This is Everett High School. This is a student panel. This was very intentionally thought out. These students were asked if they'd like to participate. They saw the questions ahead of time. They gave feedback as to what they were comfortable with and not comfortable with. They were given an opportunity to rehearse before being part of this panel in front of the staff. And Lorraine and I were fortunate enough to be part of and listen to that experience. And it was quite moving to listen to the students, very impactful. So this is just a minute snippet. And the question you see on the screen is, share a positive school experience you've had. This is targeted toward Friends, but as you so eloquently said, it does capture the audience very well, no matter what your style.
Well, I'm sure most of you guys have had a student that didn't show up to class, and that was me last year. I was having a really hard time until my counselor helped me out. He got into a meeting with me, had my English teacher and my math teacher help me make a plan for things that I could do, really important assignments that I could do to raise up my grade, and get me through that year, and it really helped, and I was able to do my best, and I passed that.
We're able to hear at the beginning she was having attendance struggles. So that was her experience that she shared, and a positive experience how she got through it with the staff. We alluded to this, collect feedback. There are a standard 6 questions and an opportunity to give narrative feedback at every course session we have. I'm just going to let you read some of our stakeholders. This represented departments and buildings. We also get quantitative data. So in the same survey, there are 6 questions that are asked, and this is the percentage of folks that agreed or strongly agreed that this was successful. We're going to talk more about our feedback in a moment, but this was really powerful for us as we continue to plan these days annually. We also want to keep the learning alive. That's a huge condition and a culture that we want to keep going. We want the learning to extend, not be a one and done. This is a building that it still has the questions up from the lid day, and they've added to that. We also had webinars. You'll hear about this toward the end of our time, and we saw that this theme, or this important tenet that we want in our schools and our departments, was extended, and we saw evidence of that in buildings too. So that's really exciting. And to wrap up just this first pillar of conditions and culture, collaboration is a huge theme. So we have, you saw a building or district-wide event. We also have an elementary school and a high school. In that first picture, we're collaborating over a learning lab. The elementary teachers came to see some math instruction that they were interested at in that first picture. Here is a Dr. Stembridge Culturally Responsive Education Learning Lab. That kept going, as we just talked about. They extended that planning into their A-lifts to keep that learning going, and that was a collaboration between departments and the building. This is a really important group too. This is our instructional coaches and principals come together once a month. We learn in the morning and the coaches stay in the afternoon, and we dig in deeper into content and to coaching skills. And the key learning for us is we're working across departments. The ML department, the academic department, the professional learning department all collaborate to deliver this professional learning, but it's building capacity. These are the folks going back to the building and delivering to their whole building. So it's an exponential, advantageous moment. And it's very powerful. So we've talked about that. We just have two more blocks that are a little bit shorter. The structures and content, a definition for you. How many people have heard of clock hours? Are you all familiar with clock hours? A little bit? Clock hours are something that we are provided, or we are providers from the state. They are required by law to complete certain certificates, and it's just measuring the time you're spending in your learning. So you might need it for salary advancement. Teachers need it for their certificate. Counselors and psychologists need it for their certificate. Administrators need it for their certificate. Paraeducators, you will hear in just a moment, need it for their certificate now, and there's a state professional health license. So it's a really important thing. You're coming to professional learning, but you also need to document it for a number of reasons. So now that you've heard the term clock hours, we have an online platform. This is the Frontline platform, and it serves a lot of different functions. Specifically, we're going to talk about the professional growth one. You see there with the blue arrow. When you click on that, any person in our system, any staff member can come on and see where they've been, what classes they've signed up for, and where they're going. Of course, they would want to choose some classes. So another tab would allow them to go to our district calendar, and you can see on a specific day, dozens of classes are offered that you can see, does this match my need or my desire right now? You can also go to the district catalog where you can search by a term, math, safety, any of those things. You can search by program or events such as orientation or EPS Learns, and all of these classes come up for you to choose from. And if we zoom in on one of those, this would be a DEI equity team meeting, and you'll see a course description, the dates, times, and location, all the logistics you need, how many clock hours you'll earn, and the instructors, and you can hit the blue sign up now. So we have a system that we want to be really clear with our communication, and so people know what's offered to them, and this is one of our consistent ways of doing that. Embedded in this, you will see if the class is an ongoing class. For example, the teams that I just showed you, the elementary instructional teams with the coach and principal, that's all year. A&S, or administrators and supervisors meeting, ongoing, all year long. There are asynchronous book studies, several topics that you could take all year long. There's job embedded opportunities that you would find. The learning labs that you just saw, A-lift trainings, so again, job embedded during the day. Your PLCs, you might earn clock hours and have specific trainings around that, and job embedded coaching. Elective courses. Most of the classes you go in there and choose based on an interest, topical, a content, a strategy. From academics I already mentioned, to behavioral, to safety. We have some self-care ones this year. They can be in person or asynchronous as well. Last, there are some required classes that you might see that this is pre-registered for people, or it says by invitation only. Those would be such as curriculum adoptions for something specific you're teaching, state requirements, TPEP you'll hear more about, the science of reading, that was required, fundamental course of study, or FCS. Those are mostly in person, but we do have some asynchronous options to have different opportunities depending on the context. Now, you've heard about how you go look at a class. You've heard about different ways you could attend the class. This is a chart of to date, and we pulled these last month, so it's a higher number now. The top band is district-wide trainings, such as you heard about the LID or the building level A-lifts. It's a wide audience, so you see really large numbers there. We have content-specific courses, and these all align to our student priority outcomes. And you'll see the classes that were offered for ensuring third grade literacy, science achievement, math achievement, and college and career readiness. I'll give you a minute to scan that.
Are those unique people? Or,
This is how many courses that were offered that you could search for, and this is how many people registered for that
and
class.
that's unique people, so.
Yes.
But like reduce achievement gaps of that 570 courses, so 14,000 people did multiple.
They
No,
could have
14,000
taken more,
people.
yes,
You only
yes.
have 2,000 people.
They might have registered for more than one class that met that priority student outcome. And likely they did, because that would include your learning improvement day and possibly a committee earning. So with that knowledge of the scale of professional learning, we want to get you up and moving. It's warm, you've had a lot of information. There are 4 corners and a middle in our room. Would you choose the location that best represents what you would lean toward in professional learning? Would you prefer to go to ongoing? Would you prefer to go to job embedded is right over here? Elective, asynchronous is in the back of the room, and in the middle of the room, in-person training. When you get there, there'll be a prompt on the screen, so you can stand and walk, get your blood moving.
I know.
I'm gonna pick the
All right. And once you're there, would you talk about why did you gravitate to this location with your colleagues that are at that corner or middle? How does your choice connect to your previous professional learning experiences or your learning style? Share with the folks at your location. No, I'm not gonna, just put it over here by you, by you out there. Two more minutes. Could you wrap up that last sentence of who's sharing? I'm going to pause this right here, and I want you to stand where you're at, stay where you're at, because this is really telling in terms of a lot of people want job embedded. You can make a lot of inferences. They want to be in person. We have a few with asynchronous, but I'm wondering how the pandemic infected our willingness to be asynchronous. Elective classes. I bet a lot of people might want to be in two categories, because I'd want to choose two. I was thinking about ongoing. When I started my career 25 years ago, we would get a catalog in the staff room, and we would be going through to see what classes we needed to take, and they were all after school. Professional learning has changed a lot, and I think just where we're standing right now shows that. But thank you for your engagement. Thank your team for sharing, and we can head back to our seats. As you're sitting down, we talked about our structures. We have to have a lot of structures to, as you've seen, to deliver things at the building level, at the district level. One of our large events, and is a big system that our best team right here delivers, is our certificated new hire orientation. I'm going to read the first bullet because it comes directly from OSPI. It is designed to set up new hires for success in their first days, week, and month, singular, month of school, increasing their efficacy, their belief in their powers to make change. This is really, we want to be clear in our outcomes. So you could fire hose our new hires and give them a ton of information. This is what you need for the whole entire year. We intentionally have 4 days to set you up for success at the beginning, and then you're going to hear a little bit more about how we continue that intentionally throughout the rest of the year. It's a collaborative effort between departments. It includes dedicated time in your building. I'll tell you from working in other districts, Everett is really special that we have 4 days dedicated to new hires for this. 2 of those days, half days, are back at their building where they get to learn, again, in context, building specific learning, and set up their classrooms as well. It is designed to increase a sense of belonging. I can't say this enough. I'm looking for my clicker. We want people to know you belong here. We want people to feel welcome. We hope you felt that way when you entered our time with us today. We want to connect with people. We want you to stay. We want you to feel supported. We want you to be able to take risks and ask questions. And we were really excited. We have this structure of new hire orientation, and we could expand that, and we gave it a try. We tried to build something, and we're going to tweak it as we go. We built something new last year, EPS Learns. Last year was the inaugural year. It was a district-wide professional learning opportunity that layered on top the same days that we had new hire. It is set up beautifully and welcomely, and let's welcome more of our staff into that environment. It's a predictable structure, so if you're planning your clock hours and you know you need more, you know that it's going to be offered in August, a wide variety of offerings. Again, it's for all staff, and we connected it with new hire orientation, because I can't say it enough. We want people to feel like they belong. You have a catalog of this in your folder. It looks like this. It says Everett Public School Learns on the top. I'll just give you, for the sake of time, 2 minutes to scan it. We had over 100 offerings. You can just see some of these choices. See what catches your eye. I'll give you 2 minutes to scan that. Roman already sees. Which one do you like, Roman?
Well, I wanted a ruler.
Okay, we had a lot of ruler sessions.
I wanted a ruler. It's the first one.
Did anybody else see one that they would want to attend?
I want to do kindergarten.
Kindergarten. Okay.
There's kindergarten ELA. I was like, because Mrs. Bowden used to have this promise that all of her kids would be reading when they got done with kindergarten.
Oh, wow. Did you see anything, Charles?
Yeah, the
Which was?
special services supporting young children with autism and other unique learning needs.
Yeah, we have a lot of special ed courses. We had a lot of new hires, so we made sure we had a lot of options for them.
I also like the fact that I saw certificated and classified staff could be like a lot of joint things.
Good
Because they
noticing.
are serving the students together.
Yes.
How do they learn together?
And we had a class about that as well, jointly certificated and classified. How do you partner together? Yeah, good noticing. Thank you for that. You get to take it with you. You can keep scanning tonight. I'm sure you'll want to. We just want to give you a preview as we are already planning for next year. We have surveyed 2 subgroups so far. Our certificated and paraeducators, you can read their top 5 requests for this year's EPS Learns.
So Roman can get his ruler training this summer.
The ruler's coming back for you. You are welcome. You are welcome to come, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. We'll save you a spot. Okay, and you can see AI, hot topic as well. So we collaboratively, you'll see a meeting in just a moment, already planning for these things. I'm going to invite Anne LaRue to come up. She is all things classified professional learning, and she's going to share with you a couple of things that we have been doing in that arena.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ann. The friend in me wants to say I've been here for about 19 years with Everett Public Schools with classified staff, either as a classified staff or supporting them in some position. Our new hire orientation for classified staff is structured a little differently. We have classified staff hired all throughout the year, variety of positions, and with different schedules. So our classified staff include paraeducators, office professionals, safety, security, maintenance, custodial, food and nutrition. So it's a really wide variety of staff. So we have ongoing professional or onboarding for our classified staff. We schedule 3 of these each month. My goal has been to meet the needs of those staff and their schedules. So for instance, the drivers, we're reaching out to transportation where it's difficult for them to come here for an orientation. We are trying to meet them there. So I take a team to transportation and we onboard them at their facility. SEIU and some of the smaller groups come here in the middle of the day when it kind of crosses over with our swing shift and the ending of our first shift. Again, to try to limit the impact that that has to their work. Paraeducators and our office professionals, we try to get them here early in the morning for some of their training, and we give them a little bit more embedded technology skills that they can take back to their buildings, which has been really helpful, bringing in those panels, Canvas training, and things like this for everyone to have some hands-on experience. Part of that onboarding with our paraeducators is bringing in some of this extra technology skills. So this technology skills are part of the fundamental course of study requirements. So has anyone, I know some of the people over here, fundamental course of study that the OSBI and Professional Educator Standards Board, in 2019, those 2 entities said all paraeducators must complete a certain amount of training. So we have 28 clock hours that paraeducators must learn as new hires. This transfers all across the state. So this is all paraeducators across the state of Washington must receive from the school district 28 fundamental classes. Those include SEL, technology, which we embed into the orientation, behavior management, the technology, communication skills. So we have to rotate those every other month because we have paraeducators coming in, monthly. Not only do we have to give them the 28 hours? Those have to be done within 6 months of hire. So we have a lot of training happening, pulling pairs from the building to complete some of the online requirements, the in-person requirements, and then we have some of the asynchronous requirements that we deliver to them. Not only do we have to do the 28, but the state says we must continue to provide them with training, which is awesome because sometimes our paraeducators were left out of some of the required trainings that we had at the schools. So districts continue to provide them clock hours, offerings, and that can be anything from what you've seen in the building-led, leadership, equity, team meetings. They can come to EPS Learns. We have trainings here for them and so forth. This is grant funded, so these are all state requirements and following grant guidelines for those trainings. We also have something, and Chad brought this up a little bit ago, was our Lunch and Learn program, which is something we're starting out with, collecting data for these last few years from our office professionals of what they need to do their jobs well in the buildings and here in the CRC. So a few years of collecting data. The Microsoft Office suite and some of these tools have been, high on the list of diving in deeper. So being respectful of their schedules, we've started some weekly trainings, just a half an hour, 30 minutes of some quick trainings based on some feedbacks we've received from them. You'll see you have a Lunch and Learn flyer in your packet that shows some courses that we offered last month. So we do 30 minutes of quick instruction, and then we have a 30-minute workshop time afterwards, so they can stay, bring their work, get some support. We really tapped into some of the experts in the building, so we're not always using our technology team to provide these trainings. Again, they're all technology focused, and we're bringing in a collaborative approach and some real team building with that. So we've had really good reviews from our staff with that, and a lot of interest to continue this. So hopefully we'll build on this and be able to roll this out to more staff. Thanks,
Wonderful. And now the best team is going to come up. That's our beginning educator support team / professional learning facilitators. And they're going to come up and share some of the things and structures that we have for those specific audience members. We have 3 mentors and facilitators. They are grant funded. They have 80 new teachers that are qualified according to the grant, and they also get additional teachers to support in the TPAC process. So I believe I'm starting with Stacy.
Hi, everyone. Shout out to my 2 partners. Our tower is still standing over there. Our work is guided by OSPI state induction standards, and I want to just read one thing so I say this correctly. One of the things that our standards say is that schools and districts must offer beginning educators robust and comprehensive support so that they thrive in a culture that encourages them to contribute their expertise while learning from their more experienced colleagues. So one of the ways that we do that is to create that feeling of expertise, that sense of belonging, is we offer a monthly cohort session just for beginning educators that we call Starting Strong. And those sessions are targeted to the needs of beginning educators. And we do it in a space where they're able to continuously share with each other, collaborate, build that community as a group, but also experience a lot of learning in the process. So our focus is on helping them to build their classroom culture and also to create a culture for learning in their classroom. And we largely do that by focusing and helping them to really see the 3 different types of engagement that we want our students to be experiencing. There is that behavioral piece, of course, but we also, most importantly, want that cognitive and emotional engagement that are happening in our classrooms. So these spaces provide them the opportunities to learn and grow together. And yeah, I think that's it for that one. So there's one other thing that the standards, well, there's several things that the standards mention about this robust and comprehensive support, but one of those things is to develop their own expertise. And while they're getting a lot of that in these Starting Strong sessions, and they're really valuable, we know that each and every teacher comes with their own unique experiences and placed in unique situations. And so this is where our one-to-one coaching with them becomes so essential to their learning and provides us the opportunity to differentiate for each one of their needs. So we do that through building we build a culture of learning for them by participating in coaching cycles. And in these experiences, we're helping to build our teachers' abilities to, we like to talk about teaching them to fish rather than just giving them a fish. So they're learning how to think reflectively and to plan instructional goals for themselves. Through this process, we give them non-evaluative feedback, we're not their evaluators, and opportunities to have learning-focused conversations with them about that feedback to help them set their goals. This relationship is confidential, and so we're giving teachers a safe space to take risks and try and learn and ask questions. And Mimi mentioned earlier that what we're doing for our teachers, we're doing for their students, and this is just one of those perfect examples of giving them those opportunities to try and learn is really helping us to close some of those opportunity gaps for students and helping our teachers to really create equity across district for all of our learners. And I'm going to turn it over to Shelley.
Each year, we get to take small groups of beginning educators into the classrooms of our veteran teachers so they can observe strong instructional practice and evidence of student learning. The purpose of this day is to provide a space for really focused and targeted classroom observation in a job-alike setting. So beginning educators have opportunities to collaborate with one another. They're doing some self-reflection. They're setting instructional goals, and then they're even planning how they're going to go back and implement their learning from the day. Beginning educators on this day build vision for things like classroom community and culture. What does cognitive and emotional engagement look like? And also, what are those core instructional practices, and what do those look like in practice? In order to support teachers on this day, we use a protocol, and the protocol asks them to observe criteria which are typically considered challenging for teachers as they enter this profession and align to our teaching and learning framework. So our teachers provide us the feedback that this is their favorite day of the year they get to go out and do these guided observations. They just feel like they're empowered. It's very meaningful and purposeful. And talk about that job embedded piece. They can go back and use their learnings right away. We also get to train all teachers new to Everett Public Schools in the TPEP process, the Teacher Principal Evaluation process or project. And we train teachers on the state evaluation of teacher evaluation, but also the Danielson instructional framework. That's our adopted framework for teaching and learning. It has 22 components in which all teachers are evaluated. And we also talk about the Everett cycle and what's special about working and being in Everett, including our district systems for evaluation, but also our beliefs and values that our process is a growth-based model and an opportunity for teachers and evaluators to collaborate together for growth. Part of our evaluation process requires teachers to write student achievement goals. We call those student growth goals. And OSPI is in the process of revising those goals, and all teachers next year will be required to write these revised goals, in which they will need to create and plan for learning experiences that are culturally responsive, emotionally literate, and inclusive, that empower every student to meet standards. And we, as you have heard this evening, we have been embedding that work in all of our professional learning over the course of the last couple of years to prepare all of our teachers to be able to implement this new growth goal process next year.
Hi, I'm Lori Marks, and I'm going to introduce and talk about the induction stakeholder team. And our induction stakeholder team is a stipulation of our BEST grant that we receive every year. This is a really important group of not individuals, because it's stakeholders. Like, we have all sorts of members, including HR. We have members that we collaborate with building colleagues. We collaborate with principals and administrators. We also collaborate with the CRC facilitators. And in doing that, we are building a sense of belonging and efficacy so that we can establish that collective sense of responsibility. Excuse me. You guys make me nervous. I'm just gonna have to shake it off for a second. All right. So we're really looking at examining the comprehensive new teacher induction program every year. And we provide a survey to beginning educators and in the fall and in the spring. And what happens is they provide us this information, and then we review that information with our stakeholders, where we're looking at what's working, what isn't working, and really looking at solving some of those problems, some of the gaps, and addressing things to make that stakeholder, the beginning educator induction stronger for them. Because we know that the retention is really important, and so we're really working on retaining those teachers and making sure that we are not only hiring and training and then retaining those beginning educators. So essentially, the goal for the stakeholder team is to establish that collective sense of responsibility and really bring that belonging and efficacy feeling to our beginning educators, like Stacy and Shelley have both mentioned. The other thing that we have that really, I think, provides a strong BEST team and professional learning team is our weekly meetings. So we meet weekly on Fridays to really set the stage for where we're going. It's an agenda-driven time where we're collaborating to calibrate and to be efficient and to be effective. And all of the professional learning that you've heard about tonight, that is where we launch our professional learning. That's where we start and many times finish our PL trainings. And we're really also taking that time to celebrate the teachers and the work that teachers are doing in classrooms. That is evidence that it's working, right? So we share that with one another. We also take the opportunity to reflect on our professional learning. So what feedback are we getting? What worked? What didn't work? And then opportunities to coach, right? You heard one-on-one coaching. We also coach each other, right? Around what's working, what are our problems of practice, so that we can fine-tune those skills. And oftentimes we meet with our stakeholders. So we regularly meet with HR, with some of the curriculum facilitators in the building. We take advantage of that time when we need to.
Thank you. That was a lot of information, and we're just gonna share that they mentioned some funding. We have several funding structures, 2 grants you heard of, 3 state grants, so 2 federal, 3 state, and general funds. So just to encapsulate this in a short synopsis, there's a lot of requirements. You know that with federal things. We have to apply for it. We have to give a year-end report. Title II is designed to improve teacher and principal quality. That is through professional learning. That funds a lot of positions. Title IV is grant funded to provide funding to student support and academic achievement. So that is managed through our office. We also partner with private schools. They get an allotment of money, and we manage that with them. We have 3 state grants that you've already heard about. The BEST grant, so you know that that is to fund for new teachers. TPEP, for the teacher principal evaluation process and the professional learning that's attached to that. And the FCS, that's what Ann talked about, the fundamental course of study for paraeducators. We have systems in our department to ensure we get those. And with the state level, sometimes there's mid-year allotments. So we do that as well. You've heard a lot of information. So I want to give you just a second to think about the most valuable point you just heard. We're just going to take 30 seconds, and we have one more block to talk about the outcomes, and it's shorter. Are there any? Yes,
So we had the best teams for a number of years.
yes.
I think pre-pandemic and everything. And then with the induction, are we seeing, is that helping with retention?
Oh, absolutely. The survey that they talked about has high retention numbers. And we do, I'm going to brag about Everett, we do that program really well, and for paraeducators. We were one of the first on boards for the FCS in 2019. Dr. Saltzman welcomed, I think, 500 paraeducators. That was a huge thing for our beginning teachers, those 4 days that I talked about, and the monthly starting strong. That is uniquely Everett, and that has, through our survey results, shown high retention rates.
And then another question too about the induction with the stakeholders, because my company, I think, does a really great job too of bringing in the different people that are in roles that they might interact with, to sort of like why they work here, what they can offer, and sort of why they're lucky to be here. So you're nodding and smiling. So I'm like, is that sort of
They're
what
smiling.
induction
That
is?
would be part of the orientation.
Okay.
They definitely hear from colleagues on the curriculum. Last night, they just had pairs or teams of teachers, depending on your content or grade level, and they paired them with a veteran teacher to talk about finishing strong at the end of the year. So yes, they have an opportunity to hear that.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. The last block I mentioned was outcomes, and this is going to be succinct because we have really strong systems in this. We want to make sure that we have clarity and purpose from the onset. You saw that with your agenda and outcomes today. You saw that in the frontline system. It's really clear, hopefully, what you're getting. So we have new language objectives, and we're excited to try those out because what we do for our teachers, we give to our students, and we want these in our classrooms. So you heard at the beginning of our time today, we will learn about EPS professional learning, the mission and vision, and the condition, structures, and outcomes. When we add the language objectives to that, we will listen, read, write, and talk about professional learning, those elements, and we will listen, represent, and view the condition, structures, and outcomes. So that's just showing how we're always building and we're leveling up that clarity in our outcomes. We also get feedback through staff surveys, end of course evaluations. You've heard about these things already today, and the Professional Learning Council. So examples of that, you saw quantitative and qualitative data earlier with the lid day. This is an example of what it looks like on Frontline when an instructor can go and look at the feedback from their participants. Red is not bad, that is strongly agree. So this is a really actually good example. And it has those 6 questions that you already saw at the end of every course. Also in your folder is this agenda for our Professional Development Council or Professional Learning Council. We convene trimesterally. We have representation and members from every staff group or every union group. We keep them updated on professional learning opportunities, and they're a really strong system for feedback and giving us opportunities or ideas for next steps. They've given us great ideas for EPS Learns as one example. We have cross-departmental meetings. The CRC, every month we have facilitators and every other month directors join them, and we have a frame. We connect together, we learn together, and collaborate. That allows us time to reflect on feedback. 3 examples that we've just done recently is, of course, EPS Learns. What feedback did we have last year, and what are we getting right now, and what are we going to offer, and how will that look, the delivery systems? Orientations you've already heard about. And then what brief story, I know none of you identified as friends, but here's a brief story. Recently, one of our best mentors heard that our special ed new teacher really wanted more ELA and collaboration and courses. She combined with the academic department, the special ed department, and our department, and they responded and immediately created an opportunity for that. Actually wrote a grant so we could provide more of those opportunities based on feedback. So we're always building. You've heard about the conditions, the structures, and the outcomes. So this little guy over here, think of him as building this year. We're getting tall, just like your tower, but we also have these hands over here. We're building towards next year. So we just want to, in our end time today, give you a preview of a couple things that are coming. We have that design frame, and we're thinking about that design frame first with the next lid day that will occur, like specifically the October lid day. It is on social emotional learning. And we've already started to frame that out, and it'll be previewed for the administrators in August so they can lay the foundation for their staffs and the directors for their departments. You already heard about TPEP. Shelley just defined this for you, the Teacher Principal Evaluation Project. She mentioned that we have the Danielson framework. There's 3 to choose from in our state. This is the one that Everett chose. And we have student growth goals as part of that in our state. So we've been doing some exciting work that we're going to layer onto. Again, Everett was ahead of the pack. We've been piloting the student growth goals since 2021 and 22 with Silver Lake and Emerson Elementary. Last year, we added 112 participants to that pilot. We're trying to scale this up so we have teacher leaders alongside their building leaders. We had 93 participants this year, and next year it will be implemented district-wide and statewide. We have a small plan I'm going to show you for that. It's not a small plan, it's a big plan. We're going to show you that in just a moment. Also, as mentioned, the Danielson framework, it was going to be rolled out this next year by OSPI, but they're working with Danielson and publishing the revised framework. So they've given us another year of preparation, as you just saw that term. This spring, we will start preparing administrators throughout next year to lead that work. And we will start preparing teachers next spring for the full rollout in fall 2025. Both of these frameworks are really exciting. Shelley already mentioned they elevate equitable practices, and they talk more about getting student feedback, engaging families, engaging those students in the 3 engagement ways that they just mentioned. So if you layer these things on top of each other, Danielson and those student growth goals is TPEP. You heard about our pilot. We really realized, I just mentioned this to you, it's more than just evaluation. It's really what we want for our students, really good instructional practices, and that's what we've been calling it, elevating equitable instructional practices. We had that on the LID Day this year. We had 3 follow-up webinars that were viewed at every site. We had a monthly resource drop, and I already mentioned we're getting ready to train the principals in the spring for their Danielson. Next year, we will continue that through their August LID Day, so they're ready for the full implementation district-wide. We'll have a September module. We'll continue that in October. We'll have monthly drop-in support if teachers want help writing their goals, and we're going to repeat that process for Danielson the next year. So this is just a little preview for you that there's a lot of things that we're building, and you saw those right there. That is a lot. And I hope that the little dip into the world of professional learning gave you a glimpse into what our staff was afforded. So I'd love for you to grab a sticky note. If you were going to make a social media post, typically it's around 140 characters by one authority. Abbreviations are helpful. What would you share on social media about professional learning in Everett Public Schools? We're going to share those out in just a moment. What would you tweet? Use a hashtag. So I'm not going to count your characters if you go over, but I'll give you 30 more seconds to add to your idea. I saw you counting, don't worry.
I know, just try to do it.
So let's call this our first drafts. Does anyone want to share out their first draft of a social media post?
we're still on social media, at EPS Schools, hashtag professional learning rocks, SEL DEI student achievement staff engagement, hashtag thank you.
I was just thinking we may need some professional learning on social media and.
There's no wrong answer. Safe place.
No, I kept it in general terms thinking that, and I love when our own department does this, the stories of the similar to Friend story with a picture of people, of the staff at a particular school. And I think that speaks to, sharing out and particular topic that they were learning about in the Learning Improvement Friday or something like that. I've always appreciated those.
I love that. Thank you for sharing it. Carolyn, I might have to hear yours later because you're working really hard on it. Does anybody else want to share? All right. As we close out, in the end, we mentioned, and it's on your table tent there as well, our mission is to ensure every student excels by fostering and sustaining a culture for learning where we engage all district staff in exemplary professional learning. We know what we do for our staff, we do for our students. So why all of this investment in professional learning? So the last little nugget I'd like to leave you with, and you heard of people mentioning it today, is collective efficacy. Believing you have the power to produce a desired effect. Collective efficacy is when you combine with others to believe in that, even more powerful. It's hard to read, but you do have a handout in just a moment. It has an effect size. John Hattie's done huge meta-analysis in regards to education. It has an effect size of 1.57. This is significant because in order to impact students' learning, a year's growth for a year's input, 0.4 is the hinge point. Believing in yourself and your impact is 1.57. And as you think about that and turn to the very back of your packet, it's the, I believe, green handout. You can see that chart. And I'm just going to pull up a video. This is John Hattie, the researcher, and this is what he has to say about collective efficacy.
The new number one in visible learning is teachers' collective efficacy. And on the one hand, that's exciting because it confirms the story. On the other hand, it's a bit of an unfortunate title. It kind of implies that having efficacy, having confidence, having all the teachers in the school believing they can make a difference. It's actually more than that. Now, to have a meta-analysis, you have to have lots of studies. This is not a new idea. This has been around a long time. But it's just that Rachel Ells was the one that pulled it all together to show what its combined effect was. And the message I want to get across, it is teachers working together to have appropriately high, challenging expectations of what a year's growth for a year's input looks like, fed with the evidence of impact. And that's what sustains it. It isn't just growth mindset, it's not just rah-rah thinking, it's not just, oh, we can make a difference, but it's that combined belief that it's us that causes learning. It's not the students from particular social backgrounds, it's not all the barriers out there. Because when you fundamentally believe you can make the difference, and then you feed it with the evidence you are, that is dramatically powerful.
So that's just 1 minute with John Hattie, but you can see why we invest so much into professional learning is because we want to build that collective teacher efficacy that you saw and you have more information about in your folder. And why did we have you do all of these activities today? The very last thing in your folder is a YouTube summary, or it's, I believe, a direct synopsis from Mary Helen Imodino Yang. She is a neuroscientist out of USC. Her TED Talk, I highly recommend. It's not boring. She combines neuroscience with educational impact, and she talks about deep learning activates the same brain systems that keep you alive. So we're engaging you emotionally, when we're engaging you physically and tactilely, all of those things are firing in your brain. And again, we want to do that for teachers, so they do that for your students as well. Lastly, as we wrap up, this is Meg Adams. I told him to prompt me to make sure I said the right name. Meg Adams from Everett High School. She was involved in our student growth goal pilot you just heard about, and we gave them a prompt. You're going to have that prompt in just a moment. It's our last moment of the day. And she chose one, and this is her reply to her learning at the end of that pilot.
This is giving me newfound sympathy for students that I make do this. Okay, the question I want to answer is, I used to think and now I think. One of my biggest takeaways from this whole thing that's just specific to teaching is I used to think that I consistently asked students to reflect in the SEL stuff. I thought I had that checks done. And I now think that I actually haven't done it well at all in terms of asking kids how they've experienced the learning. I've asked students to reflect, on how they feel about the learning target now. And I've asked them to talk about, maybe their favorite story, but I've never said like which strategies worked for you, which didn't, why, and then adjusted my teaching accordingly. And after I had done this, I went and taught Heart of Darkness. And it was actually really cool because it was the hardest book of the year. I was trying to kind of squeeze it in before spring break. And after the first week, I was like, I'd given them all these strategies. And so I was asking, how much did this help? How much did this help? And them giving that feedback and having to learn it for themselves. First of all, I adjusted to what they said, but I also told them like, look, now when you go to college and you have a really hard book, now you're learning, you need a hard copy that works for you. Like part of that is you learning what works for you. So if I hadn't gone through this process, I don't think I would have approached that unit in the same way. And certainly I wouldn't have asked the same questions. And I think even that tiny thing will really change the way I approach teaching. It's a vulnerable thing to ask, but it's really important. So thank you.
So that was Meg reflecting on her experience in that professional learning course that was our pilot. And we're really reflecting toward transfer. How are you going to take what you learned and start thinking about applying it? So you have an exit ticket in your folder. We often do exit tickets. You're allowed to take this with you or leave it for us because we would love to see your thoughts. Would you choose one of these prompts as Dr. Scott joins me? And we're going to ask you to think about everything you've heard in our time together. And I used to think and now I think is what Meg chose. You can choose any of those to reflect upon. Thank you.
About another 30 seconds on this, and we'll ask you if you feel comfortable sharing out as we close. Okay, is there any board member that'd like to share out any prompt that they chose here as we close the afternoon?
I'm gonna be the only one. Shame on you guys. Okay. An idea that's percolating is how our staff steered toward what they need the most out of PO.
What they need the most from PL and maybe from whom, right? And in what context?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that kind of brought it up was, I think Meg was doing hers, and she said, what I knew and what I know now, and asking the students, what kind of method they liked the most, right? That's kind of what I took away from it, not smart. And I thought, sometimes a kid doesn't know, And so and then I kind of thought about, well, what does that do? Anyway, I'm a nerd, right? But I thought about, then what about staff that think they know what they need, but sometimes they don't know. And so is there collaboration when you pick the stuff that you're going to do for PL, is that a collaborative process?
Thanks for sharing that. There's some cross-cutting connections to where that professional learning happens. And we talked a lot about getting on the balcony and looking at major initiatives that are going forward. But think about early on in the presentation where the lion's share of the professional learning actually happens at the local level, often delivered by principals that are very localized to common commitments in the school improvement plans, in your grade level. It's very organic, very local, in many cases peer-to-peer driven. Right? And so those aha moments that you're describing, Director Revolinsky, and what happens then in those reflective moments is where our team comes in to not only anticipate those needs, but to meet them and connect it to those priority student outcomes. Because this is all means to that ultimate end of achieving those outcomes. Anybody else?
I have an exit ticket, but I actually have a couple questions, if we could have a moment.
Oh, yeah.
Two questions. One, so there are a lot of PD opportunities in our district, which is just totally awesome. But if you were an educator that had a big family or a busy family and you just didn't have a lot of time, I guess, what is the technical minimum that a teacher has to do every year?
I'd say we have a minimum of what we provide. So we do that through the A-Lift time and the learning improvement days. And that's an opportunity to capture all of our audiences because it's job embedded. So we want it to be excellent, but those foundational learnings that you just asked about, what do we want to make sure that is needed right now based on our feedback and our data?
So is that 8 days, 2 days, half a day?
Could add that up. I'm doing the math in my head right now.
Well, I think there's two drivers there. If the teacher is approaching that from renewing their certificate, it's X number of clock hours. And we've gotten really, I think, responsive to where they can earn those clock hours. They don't have to come after school if they've got childcare responsibilities. They're getting it in their, most of us we're in the job embedded area. They're getting it in their staff meeting time, they're getting it in their Friday lift time, they're getting it. So you can wake up one day and look at your transcript on Frontline and go, I just crushed this. Like I got twice as many as I actually needed. And that's not really the ultimate, it's not the most altruistic drivers to renew your certificate with clock hours,
Right.
but rather learn alongside your colleagues among the 75 third graders in this school and map out their progress. And yes, I'm getting professional learning along the way to get sharper at how to meet their needs and in an iterative process. So,
Well, I would agree too, because the certificates, depending what type you have all different requirements. And there's a minimum you just saw for paraeducators. So as you said, it's bountiful that we hit that requirement and then some.
And then my other question is, and I feel like we discussed this at our summer workshop, and I can't remember if it was actually in our policy or not, but I didn't hear anything about research-based PD. And I know that some of it absolutely is, because there's a huge variety there. But, the classes that we create, the things, how do we know we're using, the latest research
I love that
or the
question.
latest data on a particular topic?
We'll be back next month for 90 minutes to explain. No, I'm just joking. of course, if our curriculum or a content or a standard is the driver, that's research-based, and we can show the research behind that. You saw some of the methods are research-based in terms of engagement and brain neuroscience. That's research-based in terms of the strategies that are going in the classroom. And I'd say this is an ongoing process that we're always learning new things. I can think of right now, Building Thinking Classrooms is a very popular course in math achievement, and we went to that training, and we have all of the literature from that scientist that is backed up in terms of his meta-analysis. So underneath, you could ask me a specific one, and I could tell you the research. And I could tell, were you a scientist or a professor? So,
Professor for a scientist.
so for those people that attend our courses, we make sure that we embed that as well, because your question is very valid, and the people in the audience have that question as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We invite any other questions while we wrap it up here. Questions, comments?
No, just for me, the idea that Herculean, of course, is what you had led with, and I think throughout this idea of our entire district being a learning district. It is not just students, it's all of us. We as school directors, we also do professional development, and all of this applies to every single one of us to continue to get better. I was curious if you all get to discuss with other districts what they're doing and get ideas and bring those back to Everett.
We have a couple of different ways. I'm sure my colleagues could mention those as one. One that comes to mind is WASA, is the Washington Association of the Supervisory Administrators. Am I getting that acronym correct?
WASA?
Yeah, school administrators. I should know that. I was helping them out. We have Zooms with that in terms of instructional leadership, and you hear in breakout groups all the time what people are doing in different schools. I could look to my colleagues because they have different avenues to meet with their job alike. But there's a ton of different avenues, so we can cross-pollinate and we can support each other. You could ask me later, we have partnerships with Western right now that we're working on in dual language and supporting our paraeducators to get their certificates. So a lot of different partners in professional learning.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I'd like to pass it to Dr. Saltzman for some final comments and reflections as well before we hand it back to you, President Mitchell.
Thank you. First of all, thank you to the team, okay? Ann and Renee and the besties. Do I not call you the besties? Or is that your name? Okay. And I'm really going to make you nervous because every time I talk to you, I offer you to be administrators, but you don't want to do it, right? Okay, but you do an amazing job. Ann LaRue, how long have you been in your position? That's right. Okay, I got you. But I think it's really important if you're going to move a district this size, you have to have really good PD, and PD correlates to high student achievement. But what's really awesome, what you see, is that at the table, you have paraprofessionals, teachers, principals, and assistant principals. We don't really get to verbalize it and see it all the time, but that is a beautiful thing in a district this size. So we're really proud of that. That's how you support your teachers. And that's how you make the investment in the new teachers. I see the new teachers here at 7 o'clock at night in your classes upstairs. I really appreciate that because when you have great PD, you have great results. You may not know this, but when I was a teacher, I complained that I'm PD'd out. You wouldn't believe that, right? You guys are over PDing me. But that's why we really do make this recipe and get input from everybody of what is good PD and what the collaboration is to establish PD. And that's why we're planning now for next year, which is amazing. And I want the public and the board to hear that. I think it was really important tonight for the board to understand what we do. Like, I've been to your PDs and literally, this is what you're doing, the marshmallows with teachers, okay? And I think it was important tonight. So thank you to the entire team that helps do this. You all are in many schools all the time when I bump into you, so thank you and blessings for that. So I just wanted to comment on that, thank you.
I'll say thank you, and this concludes, actually I should say it first, this concludes the business scheduled to come before the Board of Directors this evening. Thank you. Now,